Hi, welcome back to Rabbit Hole History, where each week I'm going to dive into a different topic within a historical theme that interests me. This is Season 1, Episode 2 of my Greek History Rabbit Hole Dive. Last week I started at the top of the rabbit hole and began with a general historical timeline of ancient Greece. I discovered the prehistoric and mythological civilization known as Mycenae, the eventual development of what we know to be ancient Greece, and what led up to the cultural events that we have preserved and studied for thousands of years. If you want and haven't already, you're more than welcome to go watch that one before jumping into this one. This week's video topic seems like a natural next step down the rabbit hole from my last video, especially when thinking about it and reminiscing over Percy Jackson. So this week we're going to take a look at Greek mythology, religion, and spirituality in ancient Greece. Welcome back to Rabbit Hole History. I think a good place to start here is with the big 12 gods in Greek mythology, or the pantheon of deities that make up most stories you'll hear or read about. These gods and goddesses all live together in absolute perfect harmony, and they all get along so well on Mount Olympus. The Olympians. There's Zeus and Hera, who are the king and queen of Mount Olympus, and therefore all of the other gods and goddesses out there. Zeus is the god of the sky, lightning, and thunder, as well as order and justice. Hera is the goddess of marriage, women, childbirth, and families. In mythology, these gods come from these other older beings called Titans. Zeus and Hera are both children of the Titans Cronus and Rhea, but I don't really know how that works. Kronos literally tried to eat Zeus, and you'll see in a little bit that one goddess was more made from a thought. But, so, I don't know. Okay. Anyways, much of Greek mythology starts because of both Kronos and Rhea, and then, therefore, Zeus and Hera. Many of these stories also come from Zeus being extremely unfaithful to Hera, and Hera, as the goddess of marriage, being super mad at everybody involved, understandably. Next we have Poseidon, the god of the sea. He also happens to be the god of water, hurricanes, storms, and oddly enough, horses. Zeus is his brother, and if you remember from Percy Jackson and the Olympians, not only is he Percy's dad, but he's also named as one of the big three, meaning he is one of those three main gods ruling over the Earth's realms, the sky, the water, and the underworld, which I'll talk about a little bit later when we get to Hades. After Poseidon comes Demeter, the goddess of harvests and agriculture. You can kind of picture her like Mother Nature, except she's not, because that's Gaia, who's a Titan. But she controls the seasons, and one of her daughters, Persephone, got stuck married to Hades in the underworld, which makes her sad and then gives the earth winter. Next is Athena, the goddess of wisdom and warfare. Again, my Percy Jackson fans might remember Athena as the mother of Annabeth Chase, our star female protagonist throughout the first series. Athena's birth is that weird one I mentioned earlier. Her dad, Zeus, had an affair, of course, but ended up emerging out of Zeus's head fully grown and in battle armor. I don't even know how to picture that, and I'm a little afraid of when I'm editing to see what images and clips appear in my research. But again, anyway, the next two gods are Apollo and Artemis. I loop these two together because they're actually twins. Apollo is the god of the sun, and Artemis is the goddess of the moon. Apollo is also the god of prophecy and truth, among like a million other things, and Artemis is the goddess of the hunt and wilderness. I think it's kind of cool that these two are twins. It makes a lot of sense, like brother and sister, sun and moon, they're just total opposite, but also the same. They both still make up the same day. I don't know, I think it's cool. If you're a twin, let me know if this describes you and your twin in the comments below. So after these two, we get Aries, the god of war, violence, bloodshed, and manly virtues. There's not a whole lot to say about him. He's the son of Zeus and Hera, and all other gods just don't like him. Naturally, I think a lot of these stories are about morality and justice, and war is kind of not a part of that morality, you know? So yeah, nobody really liked him except for our next goddess, who is Aphrodite, the goddess of love, pleasure, passion, beauty, among a lot of other things. Aphrodite, similar to Athena, has an outrageous birth story. You'll see this depicted in one of Botticelli's paintings, The Birth of Venus. She emerged from sea foam after the Titan, Uranus, was castrated, and the blood from this injury dripped into the sea because Cronus threw what remained into the sea. And out came Aphrodite. Ugh. It looks a lot prettier in the painting. So, as I mentioned, Aphrodite is the only one who really likes Aries, and they have a lot of affairs together because Aphrodite is really married to our next god on the list, Hephaestus, who is the master blacksmith and craftsman of the gods up on Mount Olympus. And the last god on our list is Hermes, the messenger god. He is the god of travel, commerce, communication. You'll often see him depicted with wings on his hat or his shoes. He had a lot of traveling to do. You'll also recognize the staff he carries is the caduceus, which is an accidental modern symbol of medicine. So that covers 11 of the 12 gods of Mount Olympus, and the 12th god on Mount Olympus is either Hestia, who's the goddess of fire and the hearth, or Diana. Now, the last major god that I'm going to talk about doesn't actually appear on Mount Olympus because it's Hades, and he's the god of the underworld. So because he kind of rules the underworld, he does not live on Mount Olympus. He's still just as important in status and, on the family tree. His brothers are Zeus and Poseidon. As I mentioned earlier, he was part of the big three, but because he rules the underworld, it just doesn't. Now, researching and learning about Hades actually kind of pulled some growing up Catholic knowledge out of me, and I see a very vague parallel between Hades and Satan. Satan was an angel before he got banished to the underworld, and there's a similar story of what happened with Hades. But I don't know how close that parallel is. I guess that's a rabbit hole for another day, but I think there's something to be said about religion in this time period. A lot of it was forming, and so much of it has been preserved and studied, and a lot of these stories just kind of start as moral compass stories, how to be a better person. And you see that across any religious text, but at its core, it's just about being a good person, and that's where all these stories kind of come from. So the last thing I'll leave you with in this part of the rabbit hole dive is the parallels between Greek mythology and Roman mythology. As we've kind of gone through the list of Greek gods, I've been displaying their Roman counterparts on the screen as well. The reason this came to be was because the Roman Empire eventually overtook Greece, and during this takeover, during the Hellenistic period, there was still a heavy Greek influence on Roman conquerors. Roman authors were inspired by the Greek gods and made imitations of these versions, and the Roman people really resonated with this mythology and system, so it became the standard religion. And today we call this Greco-Roman mythology, as it all comes together. So that concludes this week's episode installment of Rabbit Hole History Season 1. This was really fun to take a look back on. I'm weirdly interested in different religions and spiritualities, I grew up Christian, and so learning about other people's belief systems and different thought processes about morality and spirituality. So this paired with, of course, my love for Percy Jackson, and sorry, I keep mentioning that throughout these videos, and I'm probably going to do it for the rest of the season just because it really influenced me in wanting to learn about this. But pairing the Percy Jackson Camp Half-Blood little cabins of the different gods and knowing what they represented with the actual learning about spirituality and mythology, this was a really fun episode to research and record on. So I hope you felt the same way. Feel free to like this video and share it with anybody that you think might also be interested in this. And if you're maybe a student that's learning about Greek mythology or, Greek history in general, and you think that this might help you and, anybody else that's studying this, I'd love to pass this knowledge along and share it with whoever I can. So, do all that liking, subscribing, commenting, sharing, anything you want. And thank you, especially because this week, of course, second week of the year, second week I'm doing this, is when I fall sick with a cold and I have a stuffy nose, so I sound a little silly while recording. But anyway, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.